There we go.
Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Join us on a journey where we unravel the intricacies of workplace dynamics.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Another lovely episode planned. Great guest, Sean Everett. We've just been having a kind of a pre-chat, and it's always a mixed bag for me. I never really. It's like a Halloween bag at the end of Halloween. I never know when, if I reach my hand in, what the guest is going to be like, and the kind of the backstory and what they're going to add to the fabric of the Humanist. And Sean, you're definitely going to be. It's going to be a fun conversation. People are going to learn a lot, and I think it's rare to meet somebody that's behind the scenes, who's really part of the design and part of the evolution of stuff we play with. So, welcome to the show. Really appreciate having you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ken. Appreciate the invite and looking forward to the chat. And hello to everybody out there on the internet.
Yeah, it is funny. We never know where this is going to end up, and who's going to end up listening. So it's permanent, and I love that. I love that part of these conversations, that they're there for a long time and see where they go.
Great, looking forward to it.
Sean, why don't you give us a little background? I think you shared with me some pretty interesting stuff. I'm looking at when I'm how do you say it? When I'm stalking your profile is the right word, right? When I'm stalking your profile, I come across, it's not often on LinkedIn. It's a guy with a couple of experiences, right? Just a couple of roles, but a lot of different experiences inside that one role. Maybe you give us a little, what is Everett Advisors, and what have you kind of crafted?
Yeah, sure. I think, Steve Jobs said the dots only connect looking backwards. I think as I sit here in my fourth decade of life, or however you count it, you look back and you sort of say, like, what was there in the beginning when you were younger just kind of evolves and tends to be there as you age and get older as well. And I grew up in an interesting place. It was Sioux City, Iowa, which, cornfield, probably 80,000 people. And the one thing that was there, though, aside from what you might expect in the middle of Iowa, is we were about an hour north of Omaha, which is where Berkshire Hathaway was.
Oh,
and
yeah.
That's where Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger had their firm for many, many years, still do to this day. And it's also where a company called Gateway 2000 was founded. It was a computer company that was formed in the 90s. And it was, if people remember, it was the box that had the cow spots on the outside of it.
I remember that. I think I've seen a few of those.
Yeah. And so around the year 98 or something, I think they changed their name to Gateway, because obviously it gets dated around Y2K. So that I got involved with computing. I guess I had an Apple IIe in my kindergarten class, but for some reason, like, high-end computers were happening right in my backyard in the middle of a cornfield, right? And so as I realized what happened over the course of my career, I've always been at the intersection of capital and computing. And I started tinkering around with the internet and technology and software when I was 13 years old, hacking the Windows operating system to free up space so I could play Wolfenstein 3D by the venerable John Carmack, who's now leading VR efforts at Meta and Oculus. So, over time, I ended up like plotting stock prices on graph paper and investing in tech mutual funds in the mid-90s when I was in middle school, and really sort of studying that because it was fun. Like, I was an only child, and, I had a pretty calm childhood. So it gave me and afforded me the opportunity to really kind of just think about things and tinker with things.
Yeah.
And so I realized, looking back, I went to business school at a really well-known finance and economics school, and I've been tinkering around with my own startups, operating other startups, spent 5 or 6 years at a large management consulting firm doing incentive design for executives in the boards of Fortune 1000, Fortune 500, Fortune 1 companies. And so it just feels like it's kept spiraling and spiraling closer and closer to, like, what I know you have some Asian background, but ikigagi, which is, the
Yeah.
center
Yes.
of that, what you like doing, what the world
Mhm.
values, that whole thing, what you can get paid for. And so it's always been at the intersection of that, capital allocation, like money, business, computers, technology, internet.
Hmm.
It's taken me all over the place. And I think, before the show started here, you were talking about stories in the podcast you did where you went around to almost one person per year and heard people's stories and recorded them. Well, this was back in 2011, 2012, we founded a company called Adam and Luna, but the product we created was called Story App. And it was the pre
Oh,
to the stories media format that you now see on Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, those.
wow. That's a wow. Yeah.
Yeah, so we co-invented that, and then we open sourced it, and it was like decentralized movement, open source back before Web3 became this big thing. And so we created that media format where you would have multiple images with voice or sound recording over the
Yeah.
top that would create a little movie. And the whole point was to tell your story. So our tagline was "You have a story." And so as big tech picked it up, they kind of lost some of the soul of the media format and just kept the fast tap media format. And we had some other stuff in there like AI and memojis and all of that. But that was really the point, which is if you can create a safe place for real talk, and
Yes.
you were on this pathway as well, which is the very human stories and how we connect with one another, then that can literally open up doors as you share more about your past and your background and what you've been through and into the
So
mental
good.
health stuff. Yeah, and then you can, as most things in the world, you need to find a business model so it's self-sustaining. And yeah, so that's worked with a number of other founders, have my own firm, allocate my own capital into our things, into projects, and yeah, it's fun. It's a labor of love, and I think it's one of those things that I'll end up doing until I kick the bucket because just love it. I find it fascinating. It's that intersection of humans and technology.
Yeah. It's a fascinating parallel on our stories. It's searching out for a platform to give people
Mhm.
a chance to tell their story.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody
Yeah.
has a story.
Exactly. And what we found through a lot of our customer development and research was people with the craziest stories didn't think they had a story worth sharing, which was
Yes.
why we were saying you have a story. It was like, no, actually, what you've been through matters and matters to other people. And
It
the
matters
thing
to
you've been through and how you got through it can help, countless other individuals. There's 5 billion people on the internet now. So, share it, post it, and you could help someone without even realizing.
Sadly, the human ego took over part of that. People just tell their story for their own, so they can get more followers to make them, to kind of elevate their own personal satisfaction.
Yeah.
And we lost the purity of the story, I
Mm.
think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's human nature. It's sort of like what I found is I think we have to judo it and use it to an advantage rather than
Mm,
to a failing. So don't try to fight
yeah.
what's
Yeah.
already there inside humans. Just try to direct it in a positive way, like the flow of water. And I mean, you know this from some of your
Yeah.
background, spending 20 years and outside the
Yeah.
Western world, just a different philosophical way of viewing the world. But yeah, I think it would be great if the business world and the world we live in was selfless rather than selfish. And so I think you need an incentive model that is selfish, but the output of that incentive creates selfless things.
Yeah.
Take
Drive
a
the
long
behavior.
time for me to integrate those two things, but I think that's really the big unlock.
Yeah, it's we share another parallel, which is it was interesting you're describing it. I spent, a good bit of probably my corporate value at certain roles, certain points was incentive design. Spent
Mm,
quite a bit of time because we were running very large sales teams,
mm,
in
yeah,
in
feels
in
fun.
countries. either in a country or regionally, managing several countries and just looking at the incentive design and how to pay people, with what you've
Yeah.
got, the ability, with what you have, what's the pie and how do you divide it up and how do you move the pieces or change the berries
Yeah.
to get, we used to say, it's at one point I worked with this Vietnamese guy. He was so fun. We had it so dialed. We felt we had it so dialed in. We had 100,000 agents across the whole country and
Wow.
200 sales offices. And he would said, Ken is so good. We just take a little bit of gold coins and we throw them over there in the corner and everybody runs over there. And then we shake the can and we throw them over there and they run over there, because we had these, weekly, daily, monthly, quarterly, annual, we
Mhm.
had these layers of incentives to just drive the salespeople mad. They'd wake up in the morning and just want to know what were these idiots, what were they going to tell us to do tomorrow? And just so much fun. But the incentives really drive behavior. And so if you want an outcome,
Mhm.
you start with the outcome that you want. I think you would have done that at a corporate level, right? Because you're much
Mhm.
longer term, for
Yeah.
executives. And it's like,
Yeah.
how do you design this so the outcome is what you want?
Mhm.
And sometimes you end up with a very strange package sometimes. And people just kind of tilt their head and they're like, why are you paying me like for what? And you're like,
Mhm.
well, if 1 + 2 + 3 plus, that gets the board or it gets the customer or it gets the shareholder, the value we're trying to drive.
Yeah. Exactly right. I mean, what we learned is a very simple but powerful principle, which is like incentives can turn humans into computer programs. You
Yes.
tell them, you do this thing, you get that, they will go
Yeah.
and do that exact thing. And so the implication is that is the second order consequences, which is what happens as a result of just doing that. And
Yes.
so what you found in really great incentive design are almost these balances and checks, which is you you incentivize like a core action, but then you also have another incentive which works as a guardrail
Yes.
to
Yes.
keep people in a thing. So when we would design incentives for short-term incentives or long-term, which is like your annual bonus, so a 1 year
Mhm.
incentive, and then long-term, which is like your stock options, your RSUs, your
Yeah.
equity, um, we would have, more than two or three people can't keep that in their head. And so different industries would have different incentives, like financial services would have maybe return on assets or ROE. But in a lot of cases in public companies, you'd have TSR, total shareholder return, which
Yes.
is why you see some of the stock buybacks happening. Um,
Yeah.
right? Instead of like investing that money back into the business, because the capital allocators inside the business believe the best way to get a return on their money out of all options in the world, external, internal, is to just
Okay.
buy our own shares back,
Yes.
which increases the stock price. And if you listen to Buffett or Munger and Berkshire, they're like, Mr. Market is wild and volatile. And in the long term, it's weighing machine. In the short term, it's just like crazy. So, even that as an incentive can be dangerous because it can force you to do short-term things that damage the brand
Yeah.
of the company in the mid
Yes.
long term. So yeah, incentives. I mean, we could talk about incentives for a long time, but they are a powerful mechanism. And like Web3 with cryptocurrency really is incentive design at its core. People call it payments, payment layers like Stripe payments. But when I see payments, I change that word in my mind to incentives.
Interesting.
And then it changes how you approach that thing. So you want somebody to buy something. Well, what's their incentive? To spend that money or invest that money into that thing. Well, oftentimes it's so that they can get a return on that money, emotionally, physically, financially, something. If there's no return and they don't understand it, then why would I allocate my capital to that investment?
Right. Right.
Humans innately understand this. We just try to complexify everything. So
Yeah. Sometimes we do add layers. How about a question from the jar? Quite
sure.
a good spot. I
Yes.
think we squeezed a little bit of juice out of that. Let's see where the jar takes us.
Moment of truth here.
Oh yeah, this is a little truth. This is a little deep for an early Monday morning. Good thing
Oh
good
boy.
thing it's after 10 for you. A little harder for me at 8 in the morning to face this one. So, a question from the jar for Sean. When was the last time you made yourself truly open and vulnerable to someone? So, when was the last time you made yourself truly open and vulnerable to someone?
Yeah. I like to think I'm a pretty open book, especially as I share and post knowledge and content to the internet. But some of my very, very close people in my very tight circle, probably name five of them. Two probably are the closest. So I think that how how often or how long has it been? I don't know. The fall, I definitely did in a pretty deep way. We had lost our dog who had been with me for 9 years, with my partner for 15. It was a service animal. It was like losing a son. So that was a very large disruption to your
Yeah,
psyche in your life. Makes you rethink a lot of stuff about what you're
does.
doing. Um, and I think, how deep do you go? I mean, I had therapists over the years to help understand and make sure that I'm thinking clearly and processing inputs and outputs clearly, and then share complete open book with them. And then, yeah, so I think some of my two closest people in my life, yeah, it's pretty often. I'd say, once a week, once every couple weeks or so. But at the absolute deep rootest core, I mean, I don't know. The conversations we have sometimes don't often go that deep. So it's probably one area where I could improve more. How about yourself?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I think I've gotten there pretty good lately, even with family, really, easy to go deeper, faster, right? To
Mhm.
the sensitive spots, right? The stuff you don't always want to talk about or talk through. But having some of those with a couple of friends. I've got I'm 62 and I got a couple of buddies similar, life changing. They're in life change mode,
Mhm.
reinventing themselves as well.
Mhm.
Which I've been doing a couple of times the last few years. And that's a real personal, you have to strip away. There's no BS, man. When you're looking in the mirror and you've flipped your life upside down, there's no hiding.
Yeah.
It really, and everybody sees your stuff, like
Mhm.
when you're not doing what your core, I was an insurance guy for 30 something years and 20 years in Asia. I was an expert. I was
Mm.
in my field. I was an expert. And, I knew incentive design, like like in Asia for that, man, no, there was probably, there's 4 or 5 people like me in some of the
Mhm.
places. So when you turn all that to 0, you very quickly have to be vulnerable. Otherwise you'll suffer. I mean, otherwise you'll
Yeah.
suffer. And,
Yeah.
yeah, I've had to be pretty vulnerable, the last couple of years,
Yeah.
starting something I'm not an interviewer. I'd never interviewed. I mean, for work, but that's not interviewing. It's work, right? And I'm an
Right.
expert. I'm a boss. So all of a sudden I wasn't anybody's boss. I was just running some idiot with a van running around the country with, a jar full of questions. People just looked at me and went, "So why are you doing this?
Yeah.
What are you doing actually?"
Right.
Just a lot of my friends and family just look at me and just, "What are you thinking?"
Mhm.
Oh, and so
I mean,
you're stripped away. Sometimes you get stripped naked and you have to be
mhm.
vulnerable.
Yeah. I think it's, in technology terms, you're in the search algorithm phase versus the optimization phase,
Yeah, yeah.
to take
Oh,
all
it's
the
great.
sort of human behavior out of it. But from a product management lens, you're doing customer discovery for
Yeah.
the consumer market, and you understand what really makes people tick, what really drives
Mm.
human behavior. And I've been a student of human and consumer behavior for my adult life, because I knew it was
Yeah.
such a driving force, that if you can unlock the code or the equation to that, then you could unlock some of the other
Ooh,
things. And they're really, I mean,
I love
there's like some core principles, but it's so fluid and changes so often. Just culture. If you think about culture,
Yes.
it, trends, and now trends on TikTok or fashion are happening faster, 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 and even brands can't keep up. So it's like, it's what are the core principles? It's we want to be understood. We
Yeah.
have our own ego that we can never escape. We want to be valued. We want to feel good, but ultimately, I think at the end of the day, it's love me is really what we're searching for, is love me. Like if you look at all of social media and you just look through the lens of love me through all the posts, a lot of times that I think is the fundamental thing that's coming through, not in a negative way, but just in like it's built into the core of humans, I think, which is this desire for connection. And
So true.
And I think that's why the heart is like the most popular emoji out of all of them by far. It's just this connection and quantum entanglement and attraction forces and what is it all? Like who knows? But it's a fundamental force in the universe. We just don't describe it in physics and mathematical terms. But
yeah, I love that.
It's powerful, right? Like you can feel it on the other side of the universe. I love that quote from Interstellar, which is like one of the main characters, an astronaut or scientist, but her love was on the other side of the universe through some wormhole, and she still felt that pull. Like that's stronger than electromechanics. It's stronger than gravity. It's like it doesn't matter how far away you are. It's still that pull to somebody like your family, which is friends. It's crazy. Animals. It's wild. Like what is that?
Yeah. How do you? Well, it's energy, right? I mean, it's somehow we're definitely energy. We're in this meat suit. This human meat suit, and there's some life force inside of it. Giving it life and instructing all these millions and millions and maybe billions of cells to do all these crazy things 24/7. So I think if you do have that connection with somebody, a genetic connection especially, and then or a love connection, man, the heart is it's got its own brain. I mean, the heart is, we don't really even understand how it works. How does that thing just keep knowing to beat? How does that even work?
Yeah, it's the most studied organ in the human body and the most understood, I think. But yeah, it's the human connectome. The whole body is a brain. That's what people forget is there's neural connections. I mean, it's the nervous system is neural connection of electrical signals, and that doesn't even combine the chemical processing aspect of it. So yeah, it's a complex adaptive machine.
It is just an amazing. Yeah, if you think about it and you get that visual of what the nervous system looks like, and then all these ends of the nervous system end up in these kind of tapered little pieces, right? And to think that electrical current stops at the end of that is nonsense, right? That current that we have, that electrical field, we can, I think the more holistic a person is, the larger the field around them. And I think the more you're able to be that kind of human we're supposed to be, the larger the field you can hold. And I think if you're more internal and you're having struggles, you pull it inside you, and you're less electric, more meat suit.
Yeah, you shrink inside yourself, and
you have to.
Depression and anxiety, and
yeah, I think that's what depression and anxiety looks like, is when you really pull that electrical field inside you, and you're not able to share it with other people.
You feel it in your gut. Yeah,
you feel it in your gut, right? Even your heart, gets harder or firmer, a little tighter. And that's what that's how you end up with a heart attack, right? It's when all that energy gets just constricted into a giant cramp. And I guess that is like a clenched fist, right? That's a heart attack in a way.
Yeah.
And
It's
being able to relax the organ.
Yeah, stress and anxiety, and we live in nature. We are nature, and nature is we experience all things, and our feelings are like a manifestation of all the inputs, external, internal, and so in some ways you got to hear them and listen to them and try to protect your feelings and your internal connectome and make sure you're staying healthy.
Who's the next? Who's the next Steve Jobs? I think Elon Musk is probably the only other. Seems like to be the giant creative crazy mind. And even he seems to have run out of idea. Going to Mars is it seems like a normal talk for him. So now everybody that's our base level. But the iPhone, you look at the iPhone and how changing, that was. What are you seeing anything? Is it a tech piece? Is it a software? It's not going to be a hardware anymore. The next thing that really changes our path, if you will.
Yeah.
What are you seeing, or what are you pontificating as the next big change?
Well, I think, like, if you had to give Steve Jobs a role, what would the name of that job title be, aside from like founder, CEO, whatever, creator? I think he's closest to a product manager. And what does a good product manager do? They understand what the market wants. By market, we mean humans or machines in the current day. And then you create something that matches that need. And then if you can run a good business, you're able to extract some bit of profit so you can keep fulfilling that need.
Love that. That's a great analogy.
So I think the thing about Steve that was interesting is he did two things. One, it created a new product, so invention, combined with the largest market size, which was every human on the planet.
Yeah.
And the thing that he created was, and the team at Apple and all their suppliers and supporters, it's not a one-man show. It was difficult enough that it's not easy to reproduce. And so you only have a few companies that can compete. And so those three things taken together, I think,
magic.
Why it's, you have like one or two things that have that sort of expansiveness. So you could say any creator on the internet who creates a single piece of content and pushes that out there is in essence a mini Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
In some way, they're creating something from themselves. In some way, it will connect with someone else. But the problem is that there's 5 billion other people doing the same thing. And so you don't see the expansiveness. So I think to the second half of your question is, what will be the thing that has a similar structure?
Yeah.
Mass market consumer appeal. I'm biased because I've been looking at through the world through a certain lens over many, many years. And I think a service bot. So, the Robin Williams robotics movie from the 90s. Here's the idea, which is you wake up every morning, you do a bunch of stuff. You take care of the family, you make the bed, you wash dishes, you get breakfast, you clean up the house, you walk the dog, whatever it may be. You do it again at night, you do the laundry, et cetera, et cetera. How much time per person is that on a per day? Hours.
Yes.
Now multiply that times your entire life times an 8 billion human population. And so we've invented things called appliances, microwaves, dishwashers, washing machines, dryers, that do a single task. But if you have a humanoid service robot, and it's a do-it-all appliance, right? It'll make your food, it'll make you coffee, it'll clean up the house, it'll wash the dishes, it'll wash the clothes, it'll walk your dog, it could even, read to your kids, it could entertain you. And so are you willing to pay $200 a month, every month for the rest of your life, times 8 billion people? And so you're starting to see, this is an idea this isn't a new idea. The problem is the technology hasn't caught up, and the technology is really complex because it requires a intelligence, like a biologic intelligence. It requires robotics, and it requires the software to link up to every single one of those electrical circuits in a humanoid robot, if you will. And the degrees of freedom, I mean, one human has like 100 trillion neural connections.
Yeah.
So the compute, the miniaturization, the algorithms, the processing power, the robotics, the mechanics, wetware, software, hardware, the whole thing is like a really interesting challenge. And so if we figure that out, then that makes making rocket ships and exploring other planets and environmentalizing them for humans much easier because we don't have to be there and do it.
Beautiful.
I think that's going to be the next big thing. It's not a robot that you hold in your hand. It's one that's your friend and hangs out next to you. And the real question in that philosophically is like, at what point is it alive? What are the 3 laws of robotics? And then do we treat them and give them the same rights as other living creatures on the planet, which we have not the greatest track record of getting that right in the short term.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously the fear thing because of Hollywood and everything else. But I think you just got to be very careful about who designs the program that runs in there and who trains these things. And it's like,
ooh, big questions.
Yeah, it's like raising a child, right? Depends on how you raise it. And there's also some inherent stuff in the personality. So I think those are 2. I don't know if that gets to what you're looking at, but
Yeah. No, that's a fascinating description. And like, I mean, that's a great answer, right? Which is filling a need and something that's such a huge market, which is every human on the planet.
yeah.
And like, I love that idea. $200 a month. You gotta, probably start out as a laundry robot. You'll have a laundry robot. You'll have a lawn robot, right? And and eventually those, then you've got a Samsung robot that talks to the Samsung dishwasher and refrigerator and washer dryer. Yeah, I can kind of you can very quickly do the iterations on how what the market, the evolution of the market looks like. And, maybe it is 50 years, you have the unified integrated robot with learning abilities. And then it's a person, then those human questions, right? How to treat it as a race or population. Interesting.
Yeah. And it's already happening. Like Tesla's working on the bot, Boston Dynamics, like,
sure.
Inside big tech, like everyone knows. So,
hey, we'll have the dog that'll never pass away.
Yeah, the question is, do you have the same type of, back to our love and energy field, does the same type of bond form?
Yeah.
And we've seen early experiments with chatbots. And so I think it's totally possible.
I think it's possible. Right. I think it is possible. Certainly, I think older people too, the generations get older, companions.
Yeah,
I can,
for sure.
Absolutely. Even if it's just a voice, for people, even if it is just a Siri type of relationship.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're social creatures. So.
Yeah. And people are alone. I mean, you look at how alone people are. You look at those charts of how much time you spend around your family. And, when you're 60 plus, it just drops off like a cliff.
Yeah. I mean, in one thought experiment, it makes FaceTime more realistic. Like it just changes to the person standing next to you that you're talking to. And it's like, whoa, that's uncanny valley.
Yeah. That was when you first started doing that stuff. It was just so strange. You saw my granddaughter earlier, and I woke up this morning really early, and she woke up really early, and we were sitting in the kitchen having a conversation, and I showed her a picture. We're looking through pictures, and got onto showing pictures of her daughter. Her mom when she was my daughter when she was younger, and then got into, well, what does your dad look like? And then, okay, can we FaceTime him? I want to see him. It's well, a little hard to FaceTime him. He's in heaven. And but just that, she's 4. And it's like, oh, let's FaceTime your dad because I want to see him. I haven't met him. Actually, there might be a time when we could actually FaceTime him and put enough pictures together and enough memories together where we would have a robot that could be grandpa or a personality, if you will, based on enough. We gave AI or chat enough background,
Yeah.
they could create a little bit of a video or personality.
Mhm.
Very,
I mean,
very
it already
so cute.
exists. Apple Vision Pro,
Yes,
there's
right.
spatial 3D recordings, and people have seen it are like, wow, it's kind of uncanny. It feels like they're right in front of me.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, they get it.
I'm sure they've already
Human.
got, if you get somebody's writings, imagine if you had somebody with prolific writing or at least some reasonable amount of video, AI could just
Mhm.
take off with the personality.
Yeah. I may not be here right now with all the content I put on the internet. This could be totally a deep fake. So
Hey,
how do you like what's the fingerprint that you know?
um, Kate Middleton video is a big Twitter thing right now.
Oh yeah. Hopefully
Kate was
she's
gone
okay.
forever when they showed her. Now the Twitter, the Twitter world or the internet world is now deciphering whether it was really her or really an AI video. Fascinating
Mhm.
to think that
We've come that far, yeah.
that we've come this far, and also to have people also kind of even questioning stuff, going, I don't know. This is the royal family. It's a pretty wild thing to think out that would they actually put out an AI video of somebody,
Yeah,
and fascinating to think that people would think that we're at a place where
right.
people would think that that's possible, and then actually start spending a lot of time trying to prove themselves right.
Yeah, exactly. That's
O-
crazy.
Okay, got another question for you. We're the halfway, a little past halfway ish. So another question for Sean: has a stranger ever changed your life?
Hmm. Um, I don't know. I think not in the immediate term, like a complete random person
Yeah.
changed life at the moment of complete random person. I think over time, like as you get to know people, then that is for me.
Mhm.
I don't think there's been a inciting incident that has fundamentally changed my life just from like meeting a person and it changed it at that singular moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's how I'd probably answer that question. How about yourself?
Yeah. I was just, kind of read these questions every time. It's interesting. That's not a question I've gotten a lot. We've pulled like I've sat with 300 people, same 400 questions. We start fresh every time, and it's one that's kind of rare. For me, it is kind of a yes, and on a few different occasions.
Hmm.
The one
Interesting.
for sure I think about is I tell the story, and even it's going to be it's a speech that I'll have in my repertoire, and certainly
Hmm.
come up in speeches. But I was decided at 52 I was gonna play guitar. I was gonna play guitar. I was gonna try one more time, pick it up, try guitar one more time. At a couple other instances when I started, but never. So it's unfinished business for me at 52. I decided
Hmm.
I'm gonna I got a bonus check. I'm gonna go buy a guitar. And I got into the Guitar Center store and I was immediately intimidated. It's just it's a real store. These are gorgeous guitars. There's 200 guitars in a room, and I just got lost in this little kind of just a. It's got the center the center of the room's got guitars on stands, and then the
Hmm.
walls filled, and it's intimidating as heck. It's been there about 20 minutes walking around, just looking, picking some up. I don't even know how to hold it practically. It's feeling like really I don't belong here at all, and starting to regret my my life choices of driving in here with my credit card ready to burn, and thinking I should just yeah, this is a bad idea. And I just came face to face with this guy, and he had been sitting in stools and picking up guitars and playing them. He looked as natural. He was in his space, right?
Hmm.
He was a fish in a fish tank that belonged there. I was like, you know I don't know, I was a guinea pig swimming in a saltwater tank is what it felt like. And I just came boom, face to face with him, and he's sitting on that stool, and I still could just remember, and I'm like, I just blurted out my "Dear Abby, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing. What advice do you have?" And he
Hmm.
just looks at me, and goes, "Get the red one." I'm like, "What the hell does that mean?" Like, "Okay." And he goes, "The one you see across a crowded room, the one
Yeah.
you can't take your eyes off of, the one you wanna hold, the one you wanna caress. Get
Yeah.
that one." And it was
Hmm.
just like, okay, boom, I knew instantly. Turned around, "Thank you very much." Turned around and went and grabbed the guitar off the wall. and then walked out feeling, as good as you could feel about doing something, from how far away I was from that feeling to instantly knowing I had the right guitar and this was a great choice. Um,
Mm.
and so that led to some other stuff, which led to some other stuff, which led, but that was really, I pinged off that wall and he really kind of helped send me on another trajectory.
I love that.
Uh,
Yeah, it's an
get the
interesting mechanic. Like,
get the red one.
because it's like, well, if you want to play guitar, then you should have the thing that keeps attracting you back
Yes.
to that and to
Yes.
pick it up. And that's half the battle, is just reaching out, grabbing it, and then
Yeah.
putting it in the place
Yeah.
where you can begin, is the getting
Yes.
started for most people. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's great. It's great advice. Go for the one of maximum excitement.
Yeah. And you just think about that for life, like in so many instances of choice, right? When you're
Mhm.
filled with all of these choices and, when you're not sure, you're not confident, maybe you'd even, like for me, I didn't have the experience. There were so many layers to this question. And,
Mhm.
so in life, pick the red one.
Mhm.
When you're
Yeah.
left with a real choice, pick the red one.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
you'll never go wrong because, it's like you said, whether it's a guitar or it's a job or it's a partner,
Mhm.
or, something in life that you really idolize and you wanna hold it and you don't wanna let it go. That's a great choice.
Mhm. I agree.
It's a really great choice. Um, so one I was gonna ask you earlier is about people. Most fascinating, you've worked with some, a lot of different people from different walks
Mhm.
and, super nerdy. I'm sure you've some people who shouldn't be let out in public, to to people who you only want to push out in public and nowhere else. Um, what's the most interesting person you're looking back now of the people you've met that's kind of you look back and just like, yeah, that I didn't know it at the time, perhaps, or maybe you knew it at the time. But just kind of when somebody you look back on and go, glad this person crossed my path.
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually, probably a couple different people that meet that criteria for different reasons. One, I think, is more from a psychological, you could call it
Mm,
mental perspective, which
yeah,
is back to our conversation about uh, openness, like safe place for real talk.
yeah,
And to create a safe place for that, I think that's very interesting. And some people have the ability to make other
yes,
people feel comfortable without judgment,
yeah,
without advice, to just listen and understand. And so, and to actually support you. And I think that's a
wow,
very valuable thing in this world, because it's very selfless, right? I think that's just the essence of what a good friendship or relationship
yeah,
or whatever will be between two humans. That's one. The second one, I think, is the creative process. And I don't just mean like the design, but creative process can be anything, as you know. I mean, it could be a guitar, it could be software
yeah,
engineering, it could be building a shelf or a boat, or just coming up with something new and unique that excites you, that hasn't been
mm,
created before, or music, whatever it is, piece of writing, just an idea, connecting two dots, business partnership. I mean, you can see creativity everywhere. I mean, it's the essence of humanity, I think. It's like the opposable thumb, the brain, and then what happens as a result of that. So there's been a couple individuals in my life
mm,
who have really pushed the limit of that, and they've dedicated their life to it, where they will ingest things from all different genres, walks of life, people, religion, right? The whole thing. And what comes out of that is really, it's pointed in a specific genre, but seeing that done with purity is a remarkable thing to witness. And it's something that is also very attractive. So it's,
yeah,
in both of those instances, it's the purity. And then in the third piece, I think it's the strength factor, which is, I've been through a lot and it hurts me, and I have the courage and the bravery in these situations to continue marching forward when life could have
yes,
pushed me down. I could not get out of bed anymore. But for some reason, I found the will inside of me to just go one more time, just keep going, right? Like just do it, right? That whole thing. And through like really nasty negative situations. And so I look at those things as like a triangle almost. And it's a constant reminder to me of like, if you can have that ability to open up safe, shared, supportive spaces, you can approach your life with this mindset of just pure creation, which ultimately is like build things that help people. And I think there's value in that. And then the last piece, which is we live in the universe. It's neither good nor bad. Things happen. We interpret it one way or the other. And sometimes that stuff hurts. But what do you do? What's your response to that? Hey, I got a thumbs up here. And then I don't know what's going on there. But
I don't know what this is the strangest thing. It's something you probably designed and gave away and turned into open source, and someone has turned it into that.
Read the pixels, create more pixels. Yeah. So I think it's those three elements, and there's probably 5 people that fall into one of those 3 buckets, like to an extreme level, where I'm like, when I think of that thing, I think of him or her.
Yes. Yeah.
And if they're watching this, they probably know which bucket they fall into. Maybe more than one, which is kind of cool. I know a few of those too. So yeah, it's something that's just kind of I've always looked up to and valued, because I think it's a cool North Star.
Yeah, and those are good people to hold on to in your circle. People that can do that.
How about you?
Yeah, I mean, same feeling, right? Same thing. People that can. I think these people that fascinate me are the ones that can reinvent themselves over and over again. I've had a fascination with that, and listening to some different writers or different thinkers, talking about humanity and stuff. And I'm diving into this kind of this topic, and sometimes it's a bit of a poo-poo on people who haven't changed or don't change, that familiar, right? That aren't interested in changing. They seek the familiar and the predictable. And I have a couple friends like that, and I admire that, like the ability to just embrace the known and the familiarity and the predictability, and having a life that is comfortable and secure, right? And you're in it's warmth. It's like a home. It's like it's like a homestead with an earthen kind of fireplace. It's just got. And so sometimes in life, I think I hold both of those people in this just incredible regard: the ability to change and reinvent yourself and be comfortable just in the soupy mess of chaos, and somehow look like you're not in the chaos, right? It's chaos around you, but somehow you're a calm. And then these people who just are able to perfect this life that's so predictable and calm and beautiful. I love it. It's fascinating. It's both fascinate me. Both fascinate me. And I'm definitely not the stable, calm one. That's definitely, I've chosen another path on that somehow. But I so admire, maybe it is that admiring. I look at it and I'm like, God, I wish, sometimes like it would be good to be that.
Seek that low vibration. Well, not low, but just a steady vibration. I agree. It's a good feeling to be in that space.
Like
and I think, you just have to be ready for when something disrupts that, because it can and will happen. And so how do you respond and how do you prepare for that? Because we live in that kind of world. So you do everything you can to create that safe hum. I've certainly found that you can do everything you can, but there's still disruptions that occur. And so it's like, how do you prepare and engage for it in a healthy way and move through it?
Change comes for you.
Yeah, it doesn't escape anybody.
It for sure seeks you out in some way. And that is one of the things that the change, the change camp, right? And the growth, change and growth camp kind of talks about is that, in that safe place still, people have to change eventually because something happens, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
can you still manage the change without freaking out? Because I mean, if you're seeking that hum because you're afraid of the change and afraid of all the things that come with it, then you're going to have a little tougher time. But I think
Hmm.
if you seek that space because and you're ready for change and you know what's going to come, then you can probably handle it a little bit better.
That's right.
How about one more question for the jar, and then I think we're probably at a good spot maybe to get you to kind of give us some philosophical wrap up.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. You're a value guy. This is great. So, a question for Sean from the jar. How can we create value from a tragedy?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Or
Yeah.
not so tough, depending on your perspective. I think the tough part of it is living through it. Um,
Mm.
and one of my good friends, which we sort of referenced earlier, had this interesting quote, which I think helps get through it. It says, "No storm has enough energy to last forever."
Oh, I love
And
that.
and I think it takes something when you're in the middle of chaos to just whew, it just centers and grounds you because it's like it's true. It's not going to be this way forever. And so I think that's the first half of that thing. And
I
then
love
I
that.
think I think what you can do either during or after is look back on it and try. This is difficult. I mean, this is why therapy
Yeah.
exists. Try to objectively understand the reason why, what place you played in it, how you responded to
Mm.
it, and then ultimately the key word is learn and grow
Yeah.
from it. And is it in your control? Is it out of your control? And I mean, this is all over the place, but the only thing you can truly control is your response to stimulus.
That's
And it's difficult. It's difficult because we are emotional creatures. And so, how does one respond in a healthy way and try to integrate reality of things that you
mm.
can't control because you just experienced some aspect of reality? It
Yes.
happened. It was
Yeah.
real. And so, what did you learn from that? And um, what do we do about it? I mean, tragedy is a tough word. It's inherent in that word is pain and
Yeah.
suffering, and reminds me of the Buddhist philosophy that suffering exists in life, and it will always exist. And so, how do you respond to it?
To
So,
live is to
yeah,
suffer.
mhm,
Yeah. I
yeah.
think that
So,
was
I
that.
think perspective can help. Trying to have a positive perspective and separate yourself and look at it and take a broader view, and
Mm.
this too shall pass, and try to keep moving forward.
Yeah, this too shall pass. Good times and bad times. This too shall pass.
Sure. Yeah.
It's always
Yeah. Yeah.
that's what when
Like,
at some point it dawned on me that actually cuts both ways, right? That this too shall pass. When the good times are rocking, that will also have its pause. Um,
yeah. Roller
I've taken
coasters are fun and scary.
interesting. Yeah, yeah. It's kind of funny actually. You're screaming on the way down and you're gasping on the way up in anticipation of the drop. It's a kind of
Hmm.
a your mind is always playing ahead of the game. For
Hmm.
me on that on that question, what I've kinda an answer I've kinda come to on some of these is realizing things don't happen to us, but they happen for us.
Hmm.
And so it's one way, it's like that storm, right? The storm's not strong enough to, every storm will peter out.
Hmm.
There'll be sunshine eventually. So it is that same kind of different version of that, which is also that which you alluded to, which is what can we do with this? Now this is our new reality. What do you do with that? And if you
That's
try
tough.
to if you try and flip it inside out and kind of come
Hmm.
down to that, well, what is the lesson here? What's the purpose? What's the
Hmm.
opportunity inside here? Because obviously, I learned, this is happening, and it's part of balance, right? It's part of life. I was, let's just say the universe hates an imbalance. Because it's a giant math equation solving
Mhm.
itself all the time. So if you create something of value, right, and you add all this value, somehow the universe is like, whoa, it's got to go and sort that out, right? It's got to
Mhm.
give you something in exchange for this value created. Or if you're
Mhm.
if you're devaluing humans or humanity or something else, and you're taken away from the net score, somehow theoretically karma's going to find you, and it'll balance out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I've been through some, like everybody, through stuff, and there was one thought that hit me during one instance, and it was like, well, this could either compound in one of two directions. It could
hmm,
compound positively and up, and I can
okay.
choose actions that compound this way, or I can choose actions that compound this way. And
Yes.
so the question is,
Yes.
where do you want to end up? And each path is possible, and you have the choice to decide. And it's like, I get it, it hurts, but which pathway do you want? Do you want the one
Which
that compounds in a positive way for your life or in a negative way? And so you got to do and say the things that go in that way. And it's
Yeah.
easier said than done, and easy in hindsight, but much harder in the heat of the battle, so to speak. So, but it's a mindset that I continue to think about as a tool. Like, how do
It's
I
a great,
respond to this?
but that's great advice. I mean, that's great. Right. Because things will happen. We talked about, my friends that, seek the normalcy and the calm. And so when change does find you,
Hmm.
or tragedy finds you, maybe in the idea of change, tragedy is the change is the tragedy, quite often.
Hmm.
Right. And when change
Yeah.
finds you, um, how do you map your way out of that? And
Hmm.
I think if you do take the woe is me, you will circle the drain until
Hmm.
you pull yourself up.
Yeah.
But I do like the idea. Where do I
You-
want to end up with this? And try
yeah.
to
If you
steps to
focus
take
on
me
woe
up.
is me, you will continue to get woe is me. So
It's a weird thing, right? Focus on
yeah,
woe is me. You get a lot more. You get a lot of more. You get a lot more woe.
yeah. I mean, it's like, what do you want? Like, where do you want to end up? And then try to figure out your way to get there. And just be
Yes.
careful about what you want and like what you're putting out there and the energy thing back to it. Yeah. Because
Be
other people will
careful.
respond to it one way or the other.
Be careful what you think about.
Yeah. Yeah. Mind
Keep
your
it.
thoughts,
Mind
young
your
Padawan
thoughts.
learner. Yeah.
You alluded to it earlier, which is the brain, right? The brain and the thumbs, and everything you see that's not nature, was first conceived in somebody's mind.
Hmm.
Every
Yeah.
before you can build something, before you build a rocket ship, you have to actually imagine it. So you
Hmm.
build it in your mind. You create with your mind, and your hands are
Hmm.
just, our hands are just the execution, right? The hands are
Yeah.
nothing, and
Yeah.
in relative, right? It could be a robot. It could be some point. It might just be we'll be able to physically or mentally design, print something. But the reality is everything is built in the mind, designed in the mind, created in the mind. So we are
Yeah.
creation,
Hmm.
in our own way. We are creators, all of us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I don't. I,
fascinating.
I, I would love to think that NASA and SpaceX just grabbed a bunch of scrap metal and like threw it in a pile, and then, oops, we accidentally created,
Built a
a
rocket.
rocket ship to land humans on the moon.
Yeah.
But while possible, not probable.
Yeah, there was
So
no, there were some happy accidents. I'm sure there were a few happy accidents in that process, but not throwing scrap together.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
you know,
it's you can call it manifestation or you can call it a product vision spec, but they're pretty much the same thing. Yeah, you see it and then you do it. Hmm.
well, you see it, you put it on paper, then you put in a
Hmm.
product spec, right? Then you make the
Hmm.
product spec, and somebody looks at it and says, "You can't build that. We can't build that."
Hmm.
Or somebody says, "Yeah, we can."
Yeah,
Um,
why not break it down? Figure it out? What's the piece we can't do? Laws of physics. Okay, well, you got me there.
yeah, okay, if it's laws of physics, okay, but it seems in the quantum field here, it does seem
Hmm.
like everything there are infinite possibilities,
It's true.
and
I mean,
you
we
know,
don't
and
know. We don't know now. I mean, it's just probability equations, so
yeah, we don't
everything's
know, and
possible. until you look at it, and then it's defined. So be careful what you define.
Ooh.
Yeah. It's the collapse of the wave function into a particle. Like, this is actual science. Have you seen this one? You know, the old slit test where they would shine a light through a slit, and then
Yes.
that's how they figured out light was a particle in a wave. They did another experiment later, which is they didn't look at it or measure it until after the light had passed through the slit. So, and
Okay.
they once again proved the fact that like anything is possible. Basically, physics is weirder and wilder than reality is weirder than we have any idea. So
This is the best part is we really haven't figured out a lot. We thought we figured out a lot, but there's a lot we just haven't quite even opened that window.
I think I saw the stat once, which physics only can describe, I think it's 3 or 5% of the universe, because dark energy and dark matter, which we can't describe, it's just what's left over to make the equation balance, is something like 95%.
Yeah, we just I love how we plugged in a number.
Yeah, it's like, oh, well, this equation fits. Is it the right equation? I don't know. It's the best we got.
It's the best
we got. Though. The theorem meets observation. And so until it doesn't, like, it's the best we got.
That's the best we got. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really fascinating conversation, Sean.
Yeah, Ken, this has been great.
We went some wild places.
We're back now. We're back on Earth, I think.
We're back on Earth. We're back on Earth. How about so many kind of closing thoughts? Anything you'd want to leave the audience with? I mean, you got such a fascinating view. Maybe in the wrap up and some of the thoughts we had. Just take your time and.
Yeah. There's one that's sort of been the guiding light of my life, which is find your fascination. And as long as that fascination doesn't hurt people, is the guardrail, then I think good things can happen from that. Because ultimately that fascination will take you through pain, struggle, difficulty, challenges, opportunities, and eventually you'll be one of the last humans standing, and then there'll be some value in that where other people want to understand something or buy some product or service on that path. And there's only a handful of people that have had that fascination and gone that far and that deep.
Yes.
And so inherently in that, there is value created out of it. But in the meantime, you've gotten value. And so you've been winning the whole way along. And don't let the rest of the world tell you that that's not your fascination. You know your fascination. Like, it's not on them. It's like, and so I think part of life is just trying to figure out what that is if you haven't found it yet. I found mine relatively early and was trying to continue to get closer and closer to it. But not to say that's not an easy thing to find. So yeah, I think it's find your fascination. Maybe works for some people, worked for me. We'll see how the story unfolds, but whether you end up in a cardboard box or whatever, working, for $5, which is where I started, $5 an hour. It's taken me on a journey. So
you were a pretty young kid starting out. I mean, you definitely found your fascination earlier. I love that is a great descriptor for people. Find your fascination. Because you talk about purpose. Purpose is a different. It's like the same coin, right? It's a different side.
Yeah.
Purpose feels almost like you're enslaved. Like
it's heavy.
Like it feels like it's what, like when you say fascination, it feels way more liberating to me.
Yeah. Purpose feels like work and pressure.
It feels like
fascination feels
pressure.
Like play.
Yeah, that's what it is, right? It's the same coin. It's the same coin, but it's a different side of it. I'm gonna borrow that. I wrote it down. I'm definitely gonna spread that. I'll put that on our LinkedIn notes.
If it helps people, like, go for it.
Yeah, we're gonna put that one on your gravestone.
I mean, as a mantra, not bad. I'd be
That's
okay
not bad
with that brain living on. Yeah.
Hey, last thought. Did you get a new puppy after losing?
Yeah, we got another rescue. He's a service animal. he was in a cage for about 7 years, and so he's got a lot of fear of humans, as you might imagine.
Yes.
So, sort of nursing him back to trust, if you
Oh
will,
man,
and
love it.
making a lot of great progress. And cool little dude with fun personality. It's just gets scared of fingers because fingers were trauma,
Yeah.
and without words, how do you create a safe space for another being to help them understand internally that they can trust you?
Yeah.
So it's a good thing. Right? He's a good dude. So we love
I
him.
love it. Yeah, my
Yeah.
daughter I was asking, just my daughter lost her dog, 10 years,
Yeah, it's
9,
tough.
10
It's
years
hard.
together. And, since she was, I think maybe 19 or 18
Mhm.
when
Adult
she
life.
got him,
Yeah.
her adult life and her dog,
Mhm.
her choice, her
Mhm.
guy, and,
Yep.
also her therapy dog for a long time,
Yeah.
you know,
It's like losing a
um,
son. It's or a
she's
daughter.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
I
hard.
mean,
It's hard.
yeah, her best buddy. So it's tough for
Mhm.
all those dog lovers out there, man. Go, there's the great news is they're super happy you gave them a great life and the life that, it's amazing. So go
Mhm.
rescue somebody else. There's somebody that's been in the cage for
Yeah.
7 years that needs love. So
Yep.
saddle back up and go
That's right.
rescue another soul.
That's right. There's more out there that need our love and help and support. So
Yeah, and you'll get it
yeah.
back.
Well, love to her. Yeah. Yeah. Send love to her for us, and hopefully she's doing okay.
Yeah, she's doing all right. We'll see where the next puppy comes from. Yeah. Sean,
Great.
Sean, thanks so much. Thanks again. And thanks everybody for listening, supporting the Humanist and our kind of pursuit of flourishing and all the aspects that takes, and all these great humans like Sean that are kind of contributing to the quilt, if you will. Sean, hang around real quick, just 10 seconds. I'll see you on the other side.
Great.
Welcome to the Humanist Podcast. I'm your host, Ken Stearns. Join us on a journey where we unravel the